Tanny had grown up with multiple gorillas, and she formed a bond with one of them that was really remarkable. But she thought he would completely forget her when she was gone. After several years, she was told not to visit him again, but just wait and see how when he saw her, he reacted. Tanny Aspen was excited to see their animals again, as was her father, Damien that once so much loved. On a boat, they traveled till they spotted the gorillas. They were only a short distance from the coast. They couldn't wait to descend and meet the gorillas. However, they had received instructions not to approach them too closely. After spending years in the wild, these creatures might not recognize their surroundings. Presence, however, Tanny disagreed. She secretly hoped that they would still be together. She cherished the same joyful memories she shared with them. You know, they were family. These in the wild, gorillas had formed families that had never existed in captivity. Everyone warned that getting too close was dangerous, but Tanny didn't pay attention. As they descended the river, they observed heads emerging from among the bushes. The gorillas were observing them intently. The gorilla Tanny raised was someone she knew. Despite his significant changes, she was still able to recognize him among the group right away. She leaped out when the boat came to a stop. In spite of her father and their guides warned her, the gorilla approached. She used to hold Jalta in her arms as a small infant. He now towered above her, leaning on his back legs. He approached Tanny directly. There was no way that anyone can now stop the gorilla. Nobody could stand in their way if something happened. Occurred that it was only Tanny. As Jalta approached, he abruptly grabbed Tanny by the arm. Despite his desire to proceed swiftly, his father understood that his actions could significantly worsen the situation. The gorilla was shocked by him. Was this the final outcome? Tanny had loved gorillas all her life. Would one of now they hurt her? She was shocked to learn that her childhood best buddy would ever suffer harm. Yet it appeared as though he would hurt her. Did their friendship end? Thadani and Jalta had developed an unusual friendship as a result of her father Damien as he founded the Aspen Foundation with the goal of saving animals. They put a lot of effort into saving animals, particularly gorillas, and reintroducing them to the wild. They were also the owners of Canterbury's Howlett Zoo. This was a time when rehabilitating animals was an impossible task. The zoo provided them with care before releasing them back into the wild. It's safe to say that Tanny's upbringing was genuinely beautiful for her and her siblings. All of them they grew up in the zoo, where they developed strong relationships with the animals. Tanny was only when Bims, the gorilla, first showed up at the zoo. He was more than a year old. Poachers massacred his family and inflicted injuries on him. He had to be looked after. Damien his group undertook this responsibility. After spending a lot of time at the zoo, Tanny and her siblings soon found themselves near Bims as well. He appeared to be a playful companion to them. Growing up, Tanny frequently played indoors. We ensure that Bims never felt isolated in the gorilla cage. Having a gorilla as a playmate was a lot of fun. They were unaware that it would get better still. When Damien picked up Tanny from school one day, he mentioned that there was a huge surprise waiting for her at home. The surprise was truly enormous, taking the shape of a large newborn gorilla. An orphan named Zalta. He couldn't survive on his own in the wild. His mother's death occurred when he was still quite small. Someone had to feed him and take care of him. He could not simply be put in quarantine at the zoo. Given that gorillas are household pets, the zoo had to provide that kind of care that it provides a sense of family to the young child. He required affection and nourishment. Tanny had reached an age where she could help with that. Shay held the gorilla when he was afraid and made sure he ate his fill. He was raised with her assistance. Naturally, though, her odd baby brother was going to grow up to be matured faster than any sibling in the human race could have. Soon, he found himself unable to continue living in their home. No longer at home. You can't really keep a gorilla as a home pet. Zalta needed to relocate to the zoo. They continued to wish for him to be alone, and he wouldn't. Bims, another gorilla, was standing by to greet Zalta at their enclosure. But one has to exercise caution. Given that Bims was significantly larger than Zalta, buddies, he might cause the younger man significant harm. First, they opened a gate to let the two gorillas view one another. The two made contact. They attempted to engage in play by placing their faces in each other's. Bims showed an unexpected tenderness that wasn't expected. It was long before the professionals felt comfortable allowing the two to be together. It was an ideal opportunity for them to meet. The two became pals right away. Both of them. She also continued to love Tanny and was soon allowed to play with them. Once again, they were truly loving toward the girl and never felt envious. But it would be difficult to persuade the general public that their friendship was secure. She had become accustomed to spending time in the gorilla enclosure whenever she felt like it. She had no special relationship with the apes. Therefore, when a photography team arrived at the event, she didn't even think about changing this pattern. Visit the zoo. They likely believed that everyone would appreciate the unique link, but it didn't work out that way. I apologize for the disruption. Be polite and like and subscribe to the video before we continue. Channel. For us, it's incredibly crucial. Many thanks. Instead, the public expressed indignation over the release of Tanny and the other children. Engage with the gorillas without taking any precautions. The public's response was quite unfavorable. It was a warning to the zoo. If they don't implement safety precautions, shut down. The authorities abruptly forbade Tanny from touching Jalta and Bims, two of her closest friends. She could only view them through the glass of their enclosure. She was old enough to. She was aware that her father had not issued the command, but she was still too young to comprehend this. Concerns were raised about her safety. The gorillas also found this mystery to be intriguing. They were excited to engage in play with their friend. When they were told they couldn't, they were sad. Both parties experienced a devastating response. Tanny would go straight from school to the zoo every day. She took a seat on the step. The two gorillas were near the window, and as soon as they noticed her, they hurried over to join her. Paused at the window. When Jalta moaned softly, Tanny would place her palm on the window glass. On his side of the glass, Jalta placed his hand in the same location. He was frantic to put your hands on her. It was unfortunate, but she had to begin restricting her activities for reasons other than her safety. Her encounters with the primates. They needed to prepare for life in the wild. They were old enough and robust enough to leave home. They must acclimate to the presence of other gorillas and to each other alone. As a result, people began to limit their interactions with them. Even if they were adorable in the zoo, they would have to become more resilient after that. A wilderness existence. They completed the gorillas' training a few months later. They would have to rely on the jungle for survival. Damien and his associates had been training them diligently. As soon as they were brought to them, the Foundation's primary goal was to rescue those animals and release them if necessary. Tanny's feelings aside, that was what would happen. After several months, they were at last prepared to begin their trek back to Gabon. They discovered a sanctuary where gorillas could live in safety while still enjoying their freedom. For a very long time, that would be the last time the family saw them. Tanny was able to give a hug. Someone offered Bims and Jalta something to help them relax while traveling. The gorillas couldn't wait to see her. They rested their heads on hers and enjoyed the embrace for as long as they could. The relationship between the girl and the animals was special. It would now be separated by continents. Tanny observed the loading of the gorillas into crates. Onto the vehicle. It would be the first step in their return to Africa. This was what they all did. Worked for. They all supported the gorillas' right to live in freedom. For Tanny, though, it was bittersweet. She seemed to be bidding farewell to relatives. Perhaps she won't see him again. As the years passed, Damien once traveled to Africa to make Suri on them. They were doing extraordinarily well, which was fantastic news. The pair of primates that they joined a family group and assisted in saving and raising. They lived according to their destiny. Live, observing them in the wild alongside other gorillas was truly rewarding. The pain of saying goodbye. Although they lived in Africa, that did not imply that they were overlooked. Tanny actually thought about her former playmates a lot. Over 10 years had passed since their return to Africa, and based on all reports, they had turned into untamed primates. They became anxious around people at that time, and they had no desire to socialize once more. Tanny was therefore advised not to reunite with them. Like her father, she grew up and began working for the Foundation. She was helpful. To save a great number of animals. Everything changed after Damien experienced a health scare. As soon as he was well again, he began organizing a trip to Africa to ensure he would once more be able to visit his favorite spot on Earth. For the event, they would also look for the gorillas. Visiting Jalta, Bims, and their family was a lengthy one. An older person could not make the voyage. If he was interested in seeing a gorilla, he had best do it shortly after the last time. That was the strategy. Tanny, however, wanted to go as soon as she learned that he was going. She needed to see how the pair of gorillas emerged. She wanted to see how Jalta, whom she had assisted in raising, was doing. Interestingly, nobody else was as excited as she was. They cautioned her against going. She hasn't seen the gorillas in nearly 2 decades. They were entirely different and much larger. She would simply be disappointed if she saw them. It was going to destroy her memory of the apes, and they wouldn't know her. But Tanny didn't listen to anyone else. She was determined to keep her father at bay. Go alone. She wanted to see it for herself. The only person who understood was Damien. He gave her permission to leave. It would provide. Seeing them in their natural environment brought her serenity. What transpired after it was irrelevant. They were soon on their way. Yes, the trip included a flight to Gabon, but there were no roads or airports nearby. The gorillas' home forest. They would need to travel in an off-road vehicle until they reached a house. They would spend a few days at the base. They could then proceed to look for Jalta's family more than once, if they were not immediately discovered. They couldn't merely hike, though, enter that section of the woods. Instead, they would navigate down the river in a small boat. Prior to leaving the sanctuary's guides addressed them in the morning. They appeared rigid. When they informed them that they couldn't go straight up to the gorillas, the guides would observe them, and only if the gorillas were could they please quiet down. They were never allowed to engage with the primates. They were crazy, even if they may have known them before. Right now, it was no longer possible to count on Bims and Jalta's kindness. They were taken aback by this, is what they discovered on the first day of their hunt. As the vessel navigated the river, through the foliage, Tanny and Damon caught glimpses of faces. The gorillas were watching them intently. They were equally interested in what the invaders were looking at. For them. Tanny's breath caught in her throat. The 2 gorillas she used to know were watching them intently. They had undergone significant transformation. A lot. However, she instantly recognized them. Seeing Jalta and Bims so close made her want to cry. Additionally, when Jalta seized her with his strong hands, she wanted to cry out loud. However, her tears would come from fear rather than joy. Her knees trembled, about to give way, as she gazed intently into those recognizable eyes. She saw familiarity, she was certain. Jalta then pressed his head against hers as if he would complete it since their last farewell. Once again, she caressed his head with her fingers. When he was a baby, he experienced fear. He kept his head down against her and gave her arms a gentle rub. What the gorilla was saying, "Hi there." Then Bims also approached. He knew his old acquaintance just as well as Jalta did. Despite the fact that they had all altered, they recognized the adult before them as the same young child they had played with earlier. Them in the past. Using one finger, Bims ran it lightly over her face. Damon also drew nearer. This time, the monkeys leapt to their feet and started to cling on, roll him over. They realized they could play with him for some reason. However, they needed to exercise greater caution when dealing with Thani. Eventually, their family joined them, remaining on the periphery of the group. Dad and when the 2 gorillas' daughter saw their native surroundings, they wanted to spend all of they were enjoying their time with their first family, the humans. The guides were taken aback. They were surprised at how quickly the gorillas would turn back into creatures that adored people. It was evident that they had missed each other. Although they were glad to meet Damon, real affection was evident in the way they interacted with Thani. The gorillas quietly moaned, fearing that they would have to return to the boats. Once more, they were losing their best friend. It was a devastating sight. The positive aspect: after spending another day with the gorillas, they were exhausted. As they parted, Thani realized it could be permanent. There were none assurances that she would eventually be permitted to return. It appeared that the gorillas sensed her suffering. They didn't want to let her go. Bims continued to hold and cuddle her. He didn't want to let go, but he held on tight, still as soft as ever. She pulled his arms away, sobbing. After that, she turned to face Jalta, her first love. Sweetheart. This gorilla will always hold a particular place in her heart, even though she loved them all like family. Within her heart, she kissed the top of his head after he placed it on her chest. She whispered, she told him she loved him. Then she boarded the vessel. The gorillas saw their departure. Thani would always be grateful that she didn't leave. She listened to those who tried to stop her from leaving. She would have that experience. Never give up on anything. She realized that the gorillas, whom she loved, also cared for her. It was Athi have demonstrated a distinct bond that endures across time and space. They were Thani would return home to rescue other animals, ensuring they were where they should be. Was this story enjoyable for you? If you knew a wild animal as a child, would you ever try to meet it, after being apart for a long time? Do you believe that every animal can recall their first family? Let's in the comments section below. Please subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the story. Give it a like. What a lovely illustration of camaraderie between species. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you in the upcoming video. Enjoy your wonderful day.